Thank you very much, Elizabeth, and thank you, Jeff, for doing the slides for us. Can I just start by saying how incredibly well you are all doing? Really are. The fact that you are here wanting to understand more about anger management, of emotional regulation in the workplace, clearly means that you're being really proactive in wanting to empower yourself to do better. And that I take my hat off to you. So I want to just say congratulations, because you are already doing really, really well. So never beat yourself up about these things, but we can tweak things. And that's what we want to talk to you about today. I want to empower you with understanding a little bit more about what you can do to handle frustrations and anger in the workplace. Because to be honest with you, frustration and anger can be exceedingly disempowering. So we need all the help we can get. And so get your notepads ready, get your pens out, or dictate, or whatever you're doing, but try to think proactively about how you can use this information specifically for your needs and in the situation you are in. So, right, well, let's think about some of the frustrations that you may or may not encounter, but you may understand because maybe your colleagues have experienced them or something similar. Let's take the first one, which is the problems it seems to have when people start in an organization, in a workplace, and their employers, the bosses, are actually really accommodating with the challenges that you come with. They really want to help. They really want to be there for you. And yeah, great. And then after a while, they seem to forget. They seem to forget that you've got these challenges that they said they were going to acknowledge, and yet they are becoming less accommodating. And you feel like you want to say something, but because they were so, they were so accommodating to start with, and now they're not being, you don't want to be moaning about it, but equally it puts you very much at a disadvantage, and you start to feel like you're not being heard, that actually what they agreed to do, they are no longer doing. So you start to feel insignificant, and that can be exceedingly frustrating and can make you very angry indeed. Okay, let's take a second situation, a second possible frustration. A lot of systems in the workplace are not conducive to people with various disabilities. We all know that. But sometimes companies are acquired, or they move offices, or they move whatever, and then they're in a different place, a different part of a building, a different part of town, and all of a sudden the traveling is more difficult. Or there is just various systems that no longer work. There are now stairs where you didn't need stairs before. So there are extra problems that can be extremely frustrating and make you very angry. Third scenario. Oh dear, pet hate of mine, toxic positivity. That we've talked about it before, toxic positivity, when people go, you're lucky, think about what you can do. Not helpful when something practical is needing to be done, or even worse, positive affirmations. Like, I can do this, I can do that, I can, I will. But how can you say that to somebody? How can that be helpful to somebody in the workplace when, for instance, there is a security pad on the door for you to get in the offices or into a door inside the offices, and it's in a dark corner? And on that pad is a grey background with slightly darker grey letters and numbers, and you're supposed to see to do it, but you're visually impaired. How is that helpful? How can toxic positivity help that? How can positive affirmations help that? No, they can't. And it makes you very angry, quite rightly so, because these people who think they're doing good by trying to encourage you, you're thinking, actually, no, I can't get up those steps. Actually, no, I can't hear in a building with ceilings that are 20 feet high. There's all sorts of things that we have to put up with that make us really upset and angry. Fourth one, how about you're working really well, everything's going brilliantly, but you need regular medication, maybe infusions of some kind, so you need to go for regular medical appointments. At first they think, great, fine, but what they see of you is that actually you're working well, so why do you keep having time off to go for your medication? They haven't put two and two together, that you're needing your medication so that you continue to work well. How is that helpful? It is not. It makes you angry. It makes you frustrated. So quite rightly, we don't want people to think that we're lazy because we're skiving off out of the office for half a day to have our medical appointments. Rather, we don't want people to think that of us, because they haven't realised that in actual fact, this is what makes us, helps us, enables us to be a very valuable member of the workforce. So all of these things are, it's absolutely quite right to feel anger and frustration with this stuff. And the other one, another pet hate, is what happens when you're doing something really well, but you're doing it differently to the other people around you. And they're thinking, but you've got to do it this way. Well, actually, no, I do it this way and the results are absolutely great. There's no problem. And again, you feel anger, you feel frustration, because they are making you feel less worthy, making you feel perhaps invisible, making you feel like you're not quite heard enough, making you feel less important than others, which is not fair. It is not fair. So the frustrations and anger are well-founded. What do we do about it? Because we don't want to be disempowered by showing your frustrations and anger, because they do disempower you. And I'll tell you how they disempower you. When you are feeling angry, you can get this big surge of energy. And that surge of energy serves for you to protect yourself. But that surge of energy actually can be quite negative, because it makes you shoot from the hip. It gives you that knee-jerk reaction where you go, Phew, and you go, oh, I shouldn't have said that. And that is one of the biggest problems. So what is going on in the brain with that? Well, first of all, one of the brain regions that is very much plays a big role in anger and frustration is the amygdala, which is part of the limbic system. Now, Joseph Ledoux has spent his whole life, Professor Joseph Ledoux, spent his whole life studying the amygdala. Tiny little bit of brain, exceedingly important. In fact, it is quite funny because he has studied this part of the brain so much, he's got a rock band called the Amygdaloids, which I think is really cool. I think it's absolutely brilliant. So Joseph Ledoux knows all there is to know about the amygdala, and he talks about the low road and the high road. So basically, information comes into the amygdala, which is raw information that we haven't had time to think about, and it sends that information along two pathways. The first pathway is really fast and makes us either jump back or fight. So it's our fight or flight response. The second pathway, which is the same information at the same time, takes a little bit longer to go around the brain. And when I say longer, I am talking about the brain. So we're talking nanoseconds, okay? But it does take a little bit longer for the brain to process what that stimuli is that has given the amygdala the ability or the stimulation to make us jump back or fight. Well, what that does is then it goes into part of the brain, that information goes, nothing to worry about, it's okay, but it's too late, because we are now engaging our thought processes, but it's too late because we've already responded in this knee-jerk reaction. Now, the neurochemicals that are involved in that is something called norepinephrine, which is the same as adrenaline, which is very much associated with our fight or flight response. And equally, our stresses will elevate at this point. And when the stresses elevate, that is when cortisol secretions are becoming higher. And chronic cortisol secretions will cause high blood pressure, racing heart, digestive problems. And if this chronic secretions of cortisol carry on for too long, we actually can get some cancers and heart disease. So it's really important that we don't lock ourselves into this situation of anger and frustration. Now, the other thing that happens is, because of all these chemicals and these areas of the brain that are trying to protect us, trying to make sure that we do something to protect ourselves for survival, we actually don't think properly at that moment, because when cortisol secretions are high, we put our blinkers on. We put our blinkers on because we're concentrating on the perceived threat. Great. But that means that we can't be creative. We can't have ideas. And even worse, we are not thinking clearly. Now, I demonstrated this to myself some years ago now. I went to a very large bookshop in London, And I love bookshops, as I love libraries, although libraries don't smell of leather and books anymore, they smell of computers, which is really unsporting. But if you go into a bookshop, you can still smell the smell of books, which is utterly delicious. And I was looking around the bookshelves, and I decided I'd buy 2 books. And I went to the checkout with my 2 books. There were 2 people behind the counter. One of them was a younger person who was really new on the job. That was fine because I was feeling good. I was feeling good because I had the anticipation of having a wonderful time in this bookshop. Now, when you have this anticipation of a reward, like having fun and doing something like buying books, which I love to do, you have higher secretions of dopamine, which is one of the feel-good neurotransmitters. So I'm there and I'm speaking to this young person and I've got my books. And as I've opened my purse while she's packing away my books, I saw that I have 3 of those reward points cards for this particular shop. So I got them out and I thought, oh, I don't want 3. And I said to her, would you please put all of these on one card for me so that I'm not fiddling around with 3 of them? So she went, oh, okay. And she went on the computer. She said, no, you've already got the one MasterCard, which has all of these points on it. I went, I don't think I've ever received that. At which point her supervisor swooped in from nowhere and she actually had a go at me. She was really cross, thinking that I was trying to embezzle more points out of the system. I wasn't. I was like, and because I'm still in this lovely euphoric, I'm bought these lovely books and I'm having a lovely time feeling because of the neurotransmitters working so well. And guess what happened? That my dopamine levels plummeted immediately and I could not think clearly. I could not engage my thinking at all, my frontal cortex, and I went straight in and I attacked. And I couldn't believe what I was doing. I should know better, but sadly, that's what happens. Even when we do know better, we make mistakes sometimes. So I immediately said, of course I'm not trying to do that. And she argued back at me, and I'm the customer. And I thought, and I was getting so frustrated that in the end, I left all these reward cards on the desk and I stormed out of the shop. How worthless was that? How disempowering did that situation make me feel? And that is what happens when we are in this fight or flight situation, when we get frustrated, when we get angry. We are not thinking properly. We can't think properly. So what do we do about it? One of the things we do, I think I'm going to actually split this up into two subheadings. I think the first one I'm going to be explaining to you is long-term strategies to actually enable us to regulate our emotions better in the workplace. And then we were going to look at the short-term strategies, the ones where we shoot from the hip, those knee-jerk reactions, and what we can do about it. So let's take the long-term strategies to start with. When you are at work and there are certain things that happen that make you feel frustrated or angry, check it out. Just see if you can recognize a pattern. If you can recognize a pattern of those triggers, make a note of them. Because when you identify the triggers, and then when you identify the associated emotion that you feel, you can then you've named it. And when you've named it, you start to feel in a bit more control of it. So give it an identity, give it actually, name it, write it down, name it, whatever it is. Now, it could be that those triggers actually are making you focus better or pay attention better. That's fine, leave that behind. But if these triggers are making you feel very negative or angry, or you start to bear grudges about people, then that's not so good. So first, big strategy number one is identify them, identify the triggers, identify the associated emotion, and then you start to feel in ownership of it a little bit more, that it's not owning you. You need to own it. Okay? Just take a breath and write it down. The next one is, as a speaker, I speak to a lot of other speakers, and some of them get very nervous about going on stage. So what they do is they reframe those nerves. They reframe the nerves to be excitement. And then they feel stronger. They drop their shoulders, they march out, and they get up on that stage and they do their thing. So they start to feel stronger. So is there an emotion that you're feeling? Is there a situation that you're in that you could reframe? Think about that. Could you reframe like nerves to excitement, like frustration to paying more attention? Could you reframe it so that it becomes more helpful to you? It's another long-term strategy. The third one, ask yourself lots of questions. Ask yourself, if something's happened, say to yourself, well, am I just making this up? Am I making up a story to justify the way I'm thinking? Am I making it up in terms of I've guessed, I've imagined what that person's intentions are? Because all you know is what they've said, or what they've done. You don't know what their intentions were. You've made it up. So is your story that you've made up in your head about this situation, is it true? People often say, oh, they always do that. Do they always? Question yourself. Don't have to tell anyone. Just question what it is that you've made up in your head, what it is that is stopping you, what it is that, just question if it's true. And again, you start to feel it in a bit more control. This is all about me giving you a little bit more control, okay? What about you are frustrated, perhaps because you expect yourself a lot of yourself. You've set the bar really high. And I do this myself. I expect a lot from me, a lot more from me than I would from other people. So how about you think about that and you think, well, actually, am I setting the bar a bit too high for me today? And maybe drop the bar a little bit. Maybe don't give yourself such a hard time for such high goals. Maybe break them down into small bite-sized pieces so you feel less frustrated if things don't go right for you, and you can actually start to feel a celebration of the small wins, which is part of getting to the big goal. So perhaps you can tweak a little bit of what you expect of yourself and those frustrations. And another thing I hear a lot is that people feel frustrated and angry perhaps because they've been overlooked. Perhaps they're not getting that pay rise. Perhaps they're not getting that promotion. Perhaps they're not getting that pat on the back saying, well done. But maybe that's our fault. Maybe because we are taught not to brag, not to be arrogant, not to be conceited. Maybe we therefore don't tell anyone about what we have achieved that is above and beyond what we were asked to achieve. So we don't need to be cocky about it, but we could say something like, do you know, I am so pleased I managed to do a little bit more than I was meant to do. And I'm really, really chuffed with myself. I'm really pleased about that. Tell people that, you know, what you've done. If you feel you've been overlooked for a pay rise, for instance, don't go into the office with the boss or online or whatever it is and say, it's not fair. He or she or they have just got a pay rise and I haven't. That's not fair. No, no, no. You go in and you say, right, I've done my research. These were my goals. These were my KPIs. This is what you set for me. I've done this. I've done this. I've done this. I've done this. And the extra, I've done this. I've done this. I've done this. I've done this. I believe I deserve a pay rise. Could I have one, please? So don't go in feeling angry and frustrated and using all those words and those victim words. No, state your case, make your claim based upon your research and what you've actually attained to do. A little bit more control, a little bit more. Okay. Now, I want you to consider what it is that you have done in the past when you have felt frustrated or angry that worked. What did you do that you did really well? Because rather than that knee-jerk reaction, rather than get angry and start stewing about it, what did you do that really worked? And could you answer that in the chat, please, when I'll take a look at it? I haven't been looking at it now, but I see there's lots of comments. Okay, right, it's all about the recording. Okay, So please, can you tell me, what have you done that has worked? Because I think it'd be very wonderful if you could share that with others in the chat. Right, let's have a look. Take a break, go for a walk. Yep, go for a walk, go for a walk. Perfect, love it. What else? Call a friend, nice. Yep, absolutely. Anything else? Drink some water, very good. Really, really good idea. That's not on my list. That's excellent. Dehydration is massive. Left the situation and went out. Do some breathing. Yeah. Yell in my car. Yes, 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 yes. Yell in your car. Yes. Leave the next day. Track my successes throughout the year. Great. Recognize my response a bit sharp and debrief for the colleague. Great. Deep grounding breathing. Call HR. I felt the difference having gotten rid of that frustrated, angry energy. Okay, so great, Karen. Yeah, recognize the response was a bit sharp. Write the fears and resentments down and throw them out. Nice, Alex. Really nice. Okay, any more? Listen to a meditation. Yep, 100%. Any more out there? I did some taekwondo in the class and I literally worked, but then I extended my knee. Oh, I so relate to you, Colin. I did some kickboxing 3 months ago and I broke 2 ribs. I really understand. And I was out of training for 9 weeks. How annoying is that? Yeah, get it. Talk to a therapist and find out strategy to deal with it the other day. Yeah, absolutely. Listen to music, talk to somebody, play piano. Perfect. Excellent. Go to, oh, that's an interesting. I assume that's an ordinary park with trees and grass.
It's Lynda, it's a gorgeous national park in Canada, Algonquin Park. It's so scenic and beautiful. It's in Ontario.
Brilliant. I love it. I love it. Take a deep breath and relax. Yeah. Short-term strategies. Brilliant ideas. Okay, let's tell you what I've got written down on my piece of paper here. Breathe, like some of you have already said. If you have got that knee-jerk reaction about, like I was in that bookshop, and I responded, I rose to this because my dopamine levels plummeted and everything else was changing in my brain. The thing that I should have done is taken a deep breath. Just a deep breath for me to actually get out of my sympathetic nervous system and to re-engage in my parasympathetic nervous system and calmed myself down. So therefore, I want you to think about this, taking a breath. First aid Band-Aid, okay? It's the first aid bit that you need is to take a breath before you open your mouth, absolutely before you speak. When you've taken that breath, deep breath a few times, and you're feeling calmer, then you've got to think. You've got to think. You've got to identify what it is that's going on here very quickly and see if you can offer a solution, albeit small, quick. You haven't thought about it for long. Just give that little bit of a solution that actually makes people think too and stops them being in this emotional state. So, okay, so now we're thinking, and language is important here. Use language that doesn't constantly start with you. You said this, you did that, you. No, use I. I was thinking, my interpretation of that, can we think about this together? Those are the words that you need to use. Language is really important. When they say sticks and stones may break our bones, but names will never hurt us, is absolute rubbish, and I think we all know it. Language is exceedingly important and can be exceedingly painful and exceedingly useful. So we need to make it useful for us. So rather than stewing in the blame victim thing, use language that actually starts drawing people in. I was thinking, take shoulder of it, you know, maybe I did respond a little bit quickly there, but actually, wouldn't it be better if we discussed it ABC? So they're the short-term strategies that you can use, as well as all the ones that you've come up in with the chat. So I'm now going to open this up to questions, please. What questions have you got? Elizabeth, could you facilitate the questions for me?
Yes, well, actually, we have one right away from Alex, and he has put in the question section, he said, instead of anger being my issue, shutting down was my issue. I stopped working for others a long time ago, but want to re-enter the workforce. I didn't get angry at work, though. I shrank instead and would get very anxious. Eventually, I would resign, feeling like I didn't belong. Any advice on this response and how to manage these feelings if they get triggered?
Yes, they are. There are similar triggers, and your response to it is, rather than frustration and anger, you actually shrank into yourself. You wanted to become invisible. You wanted to shrink away from the confrontation, the apparent conflict, which is another way of us actually keeping ourselves safe. So my advice is, if you feel that you're becoming invisible, if you feel that you're becoming, you're not being heard, is actually to think about what the other people, their perception might be. Is their perception that they actually haven't noticed you because you've gone quiet? If that's the case, then maybe it's a good idea to calm yourself down in all of the techniques, or one or two of the techniques we've talked about, and actually start to feel less anxious and talk to people. Talk to people so that you don't necessarily have to address the problem, but you actually start them to show them that you are a person who is great to be around. You might be able to tell them, just even ask them questions like, how is your family? And remember the name of their children, or remember the name of their partner, or remember where they like to go on holiday, or what they've just done the weekend. So it's easier to actually be interested in people, because by doing so, you become more interesting. So that is one way of doing it. It's easier, can breathe, perhaps cry a bit. Yeah. You're absolutely right, Kimberly. We must not bottle up emotion, ever, ever, ever. Never bottle up emotion. Any suggestions? Okay, hang on a minute. But when you are on the job, and it's not always possible to do that, any suggestions when you have to be on? I suggest you go to the loo. I suggest you go to the washroom, as you call it. I suggest you just to go to excuse yourself and go in the cubicle for 5 minutes and go and do whatever you want, but quietly, so in case somebody walks in, and then come out again, and you can have your moment to yourself without people realizing you've had a moment to yourself. So yeah, I too could relate to that, Kimberly. Okay. Well, perhaps you did get scared of criticism, Alex, but you're welcome, Kimberly. But none of us like criticism. None of us like to be judged. So just take a deep breath and remember that people's perception of us is always different to how we believe we're being perceived, and just try to make decent conversation with people as best you can. So yeah, so well done, Carlin. Did that work for you? Putting a smile on and ask how you're doing? It looks as if it must have done. So yeah, I think that is probably one way of not sliding into a place of anxiety if you can. Yeah, totally right. Yeah, we do get worried of criticism. Any more questions?
I've actually got a really great question for you, Dr. Shaw. Should we have empathy for people who make us feel angry or frustrated?
That's a really great question. If you think that everybody has got their struggles, if you think everybody's got their gremlins, if you think that everyone's got problems of either overworked, or there might be problems at home, or something is going wrong, then you can start to think to yourself, empathize with it a bit more. So if you look at people and think, we're all here on the same ticket, what was her name? Calamity Jane, Doris Day said that. We're all here on the same ticket. And I always remember that. I think that is a great way of putting it. We're all here on the same ticket. We've all got our gremlins. We've all got our problems. So if we believe that, then we can show people empathy. We can try to understand them. And think about it like this. If we are trying to understand what it's like from somebody else's point of view, looking at this situation we're in, we actually become the people of strength. We are the ones who are showing strength because we are trying to see it from their point of view. Human behavior is not black and white. It's never right or wrong. It's just, okay, murdering somebody is wrong, okay, stealing is wrong, but nevertheless, normally human behavior isn't black and white. So it's worth thinking about that. It's worth thinking about, we can have empathy for those people who make us feel angry and frustrated because they've got their own problems too. But there's a dark side to empathy. And the dark side is this. When Russia first invaded Ukraine, the first 2 weeks, I found it very, very difficult because I was having so much empathy for the people of Ukraine and the normal people, the everyday person in the street in Russia. And I found I wasn't functioning very well. I got very frightened, very worried. And because I was feeling so much empathy. But what happened was the empathy was redirected back to me and I started to feel bad. The empathy I was feeling for others was making me feel bad. So it was about me. So it wasn't about them. That is not what that's not what it's for. What it is better. The only way I got out of it was to donate money to various charities to help the people in Ukraine. And I grounded myself. I could then think about them and show compassion. That is different, and it's actually far more beneficial to show compassion than allow empathy to turn back and put the spotlight on ourselves. But nevertheless, if we put ourselves in somebody else's shoes, if we try to think what it's like to be them, what they're seeing, then I'd actually think it's worth showing people empathy who are making us feel bad, because we will feel stronger for trying.
We've got a question in the chat, Lynda, about what about explaining a disability such as ADHD to employers? What do you recommend?
I recommend, it depends on the employers, depend on the industry, but neurodiversity is big. It's becoming very big agenda in global organizations. So therefore, people are starting to realize, because I am part of a very large band and I'm playing a very small role in making sure people hear that neurodiversity is of value. Everybody has got their strengths to bring to the table. And that's what I would be saying. I would be saying, as a person with the ADHD, I would be saying, right, this is what it means. This is how it affects me. And these are my strengths that goes with it and my unique strengths because of it. This is the benefit I can give your organization. And you're mad not to employ me. No, don't say that bit. But you see what I mean? So you know, just always never moan, never whine, give your case, do your research, and this is what I can offer you, because all they're interested in is what is in it for them. So what's in it for them to employ somebody with ADHD? Tell them.
I think that's really good advice, Lynda. And we've got another question in the chat. From Serena, who says, I have a situation with a difficult coworker and I retreat inwardly to avoid further confrontation with them. Is there an appropriate way to handle further problems?
Yeah, if there is a coworker who is making you feel like that, that's a form of bullying. Okay, and bullying is unacceptable. Now, it might be unintended. It might be that the person has got so much going on, they're not realizing what they're doing. But if your response is to internalize what's happening, that will do you harm. And it will certainly not benefit the organization who's employing you, because you won't be working properly. So my suggestion is to have a conversation if you can. If you can, have a conversation. Look, we've got to sort this out. This is what's going on. And be very honest. If that is hard for you, or indeed you are worried that they might misinterpret what you say, then try it and have a third person there with you, so that they can listen to what we both have to say. If that doesn't work, then I suggest you speak to HR and find out what's going on. But you can't allow people to make you feel that bad.
Dr. Shaw, this is Lisa Kelly. I'm going to jump in. We've got a couple questions also in our Q&A, so I want to make sure we get those. How can we deal with pervasive anger that's constantly there? There's someone who's feeling a general anger and anxiety around office policies on COVID and people not caring about others getting sick. I find it disrespectful to not wear a mask or not get vaccinated. Now that my family is very ill with it and one in the hospital, these feelings have only gotten stronger.
Yeah, this situation is definitely set up with them and us, and that is never helpful. Any kind of them and us situation means you're in two camps, and the two camps you will be using cognitive biases, you'll be using confirmation bias, you'll be looking for things that is confirming your uncomfortable feelings about that person. So you have really got this them and us situation going on. Again, a lesson in perception is really wise. A lesson in perception is that our perception is unique to only us. And so what our personal reality is our perception. So everybody, all of you people now who are listening to me and seeing me will be hearing and seeing something different based upon your experiences and life so far. Every one of you, you may come to a consensus, oh, that Lynda Shaw's this or she's that or whatever. But that is the consensus. So if we understand that everybody's perception in that scenario is different, and if they're wearing a mask or they're not wearing a mask, if they are vaccinated, they're not vaccinated, if they're working from home or they're working in the office, we need to try to understand that everybody's got their reasons and they're doing it for good reasons for them. And try not to get angry about that, because you can't change it. You can't force people to wear a mask, not wear a mask. You can't force people to be vaccinated, not be vaccinated. You can't force people, but you can come to a point of understanding where you live and let live. And that's what we have to do, sadly. But this situation with COVID has created a huge amount of angst and worry and fear, but on many, many levels.
Yeah, I'll just throw in, of course, we always want to follow Canadian law and Ontario guidelines for masking requirements, obviously, so that's outside of those situations. Okay, I have somebody else in the chat who says, my anger goes from annoyed to irritated to mad to outraged to explosive. How do I stop it in the annoyed or irritated stage?
You won't completely stop being irritated. Because some things just will irritate us. It can be because we haven't slept well, because sleep is the most important thing we can do for our health, by the way, the number one thing. It could mean that we haven't eaten properly. Somebody's already said about drinking water. We could be dehydrated. There could be lots of reasons why something irritates us, or maybe that doesn't normally irritate us, but our state means that we have become irritated. It might be that is one of those patterns that is that we need to recognize and write it down. And so therefore we are recognizing it and taking ownership of it. We're identifying it and controlling it more. For me, the key for you, I believe, is for that irritation not to go into this full-blown rage. So to accept that you are irritated by something, accept that you're frustrated by something, and then put these strategies in place to stop it going further, to take those deep breaths, to do those things that we've discussed, so that you have got more control over this and you head it off at the pass.
Great, that's great advice. I actually have an irritation journal myself, so I know and can warn everyone on my team. Okay, we have another great question, which is, close to everybody's hearts here again in the midst of this pandemic. I'm the head nurse of a critical care unit, and I struggle with setting boundaries with the nurses. I feel like I always have to solve everyone's problems. It wears me down. How can I protect myself?
Well, first of all, you've got clearly a very lovely human being, because you're trying to do so much. but perhaps you're taking on a little bit too much. Because if we can't help people, we can't be kind to people if we don't start with ourselves. We need to be kind to ourselves. We need to be understanding to us about ourselves as well. It's the analogy, you know, the old analogy of a mother with an infant on an aeroplane and the oxygen mask come down. She's got to put her own mask on first before she puts a mask on the infant. So it's the same thing throughout life. And I know that's an old anecdote, but it does serve a purpose. Setting boundaries is really important. Really important. And if you're having to keep doing it, maybe you need to have a sensible conversation with these people. When you say when you say about boundaries, what kind of boundaries do you mean? Can you tell me that?
Perhaps Helen, if you don't mind coming on, or you can type it in, but we could unmute Helen and see if she wants to share more information on that.
Hello.
Hi there.
We can hear you.
Hi, it's Helene.
Please go ahead, elaborate a bit more.
No, so I found like some nurses will contact me outside of work hours asking me questions, or when I'm at work, my break is never a priority. Everybody else's break is. The kind of unit I work in, I'm in the unit a lot. So, you know, critical care patients obviously are quite ill and there's always some emergency somewhere. But I find like the nurses expect me to know protocols and how to mix drugs and all this stuff instead of trying to find the information themselves. I'm an easier target because I've been a nurse for 20 years and I have a lot of experience. So it's just the constant, you know, like I do feel like a mother, you know, I'm a mother of a 12, 13 bed unit and all the nurses that go and go with it. So that's the main thing. I go to break, they come find me. Like it's really hard to like say, okay, don't find me until someone's, you know, coding, you know, like it's really hard to get out of it.
Yeah, I understand that they're used to you doing it.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, they're used to you being the go-to person who will fix things. And clearly you're an extremely capable human being. But sometimes you can't be capable. It's too exhausting.
Yes.
And Elsie's quite right here, saying that the oxygen mask metaphor is repeated over. Yeah, I get that. But we still do need to put ourselves first sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
We still do need to, on a practical level, go for that walk. And if you can't go for a walk, go and listen to the music. If you, whatever it is, something where you extract yourself just for you.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and so if you have, you know, if you are the go-to person for everybody, you know, to come and help, come and fix me, come and help with this situation, just sometimes say, actually, I don't know how to do that one, or actually, no, I can't at the moment because I'm really busy, or actually, I'll do it tomorrow. I haven't got time to do it. You know, the boundaries have got to be there. If you don't put the boundaries up, you won't actually get through it. You won't make old bones.
I agree. Thanks. That's great advice.
Okay. But we do thank you as a frontline worker, everybody here is very appreciative. So, and thank you for asking that question. Yeah, we have another question. How do you deal with angry customers at work when you feel like you're going to get angry and yell at them? So how do you deal with that in a positive way?
Yeah, customer facing is really tough. It's really tough. One of the best ways of handling customer anger is with respectful humor. But it's not always easy to do, especially if you've had enough as well. And it's like you're the fifth person who's spoken to me like that, and I've just had enough. The way to do it is, again, language is good. So I can remember once I was advising with this large call center, and I was listening in on the calls, and one of the people working in the company was listening to this person. This person was saying, I am so angry. I am really angry at la, 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 la. I'm so angry. And this person on the other end going, I can hear you're frustrated. No, I'm really, really angry. Why not use the same words back at them? So you've acknowledged that you've heard them. So it would have been better to say, I hear you're angry. Let's see if I can help you. So again, we take control. Do you see what I mean? We are still, using the language to make the person feel heard, make the person feel that you're paid attention, make the person feel that they're significant. And once they've done that, it's like a 2-year-old. If you think of a 2-year-old who's mother's standing at the kitchen sink, or the parents, mummy, 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 mummy. And it's like, what? No, get off, get off. If you bend down to the child and go, what is it? They tell you and they go off and play. So they need to be heard. And we don't grow up, to be honest. So, watch a 2-year-old and you'll learn an awful lot about psychology. So if you actually are using language that is showing that person that you've heard them properly and you're doing something about it, you're likely to diffuse them.
That's a really great suggestion. Thank you for sharing those. I actually love that, repeating the words back. We have time for one more question. How do you handle a coworker with high anxiety levels? She stresses out about the smallest things and has no problem on leaving her spot saying, I need a minute alone. And sometimes it can take up to 10 minutes when they're really busy.
Yeah, there is an issue now in the workplace where people are, because anxiety and stress disorders and even depression has been on the increase, and I believe it is going to be on the increase a little bit longer yet, and maybe further, depending if there's more curveballs coming, we have no idea. The issue is that because people in the workplace are trying very hard to accommodate people who are in a bad way, everybody thinks they've got to be a pseudo-psychologist, which isn't fair. So, for instance, if somebody is signed off and they're off sick for a couple of weeks with a mental health disorder, and then they come back, and you try to encourage them back. A good boss will try to encourage them back, say, just come back for an hour and catch up with the company gossip. Just come back, just so that you're easing them back in. What happens is the rest of the staff are almost tiptoeing so as they're not upsetting the person who is just coming back in. Or if they come in for an hour, they've been there for half a day. Everyone is trying really hard to do their job and also not be rude and be welcoming and warm to this person. It is really, really a fine line to work with somebody who has any kind of issue like that. You can only do so much listening. You can only do so much listening to the same story more than once, twice, 3 times. We're all human. There's only so much you can do. And if that person is draining you somewhat, and you're not getting on with what you're supposed to be doing, and they're not doing what they've said that you're supposed to be doing, then maybe having a chat with HR again. And I know it sounds like a cop-out, but in actual fact, we can only do so much, and we've still got a job to do. So, I mean, you might need to elevate it to professional help.
Absolutely. Any final closing thoughts, Dr. Shaw, before we thank you very much for joining us. Thank Dean and Amelia for providing our ASL interpretation. Any final parting thoughts for everyone?
Sorry, what was the last bit again, did you say?
Oh, sorry, any parting thoughts or wisdom you'd like to share with us?
Sure, I tell you what, and please don't think I'm being flippant when I say this, but I say it as a neuroscientist and psychologist. If we can focus outside of ourselves on someone else, we can cope better with our own gremlins, our own shadows. Okay, not all the time, but some of the time. And if we can, at some point, take ourselves a little less seriously and have some fun, a lot of stuff would dissolve. Not everything, not by any means. But so my message is this. I've never seen it written that life shouldn't be fun, but life can be very, very hard. But we get windows where we can have fun. We get windows of lightening up. And I think that is a really valuable thing to consider and to evolve, to continue with.
Can't end on a better note than that. Thank you so much, Dr. Shaw. Thank you, everyone who joined us. Next week, we'll have Mary Poffenroth from the US joining us, talking. She's a fearologist who's going to talk about how we can use fears to, actually help improve our performance at work. I hope you'll all join us. Thank you again. I hope everything in England is sunny and bright, and we just enjoyed having you on again so much. Have a great day, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye now.
So perhaps Jeff can stop the recording.